So
Okay.
officially welcome to Miss
Thank you.
Immigrants Podcast, which is called Wise Immigrant, where we bring candidates and we learn more about them because after all, who are the people that will be leading us, fighting for us, doing the good things? Do they have the character? Are they good people? So Raj, we wanted to learn more about you. Where you coming from? And I know you are a son of immigrants and you are really like leading your campaign with this message and sharing openly, I mean so openly, about your story, your parents, all the struggles. And I think this is something that we need to hear more about where the people who succeed, a lot of them, they are immigrants. I mean, after all, America built by immigrants, but
Yes.
somehow we forgot over the tens of decades that this is who we are. And doesn't matter if me, first generation immigrants, or you, second generation of immigrants, we need to spread this message more. And on Miss Immigrant Podcast, we talk a lot about immigrant identity and belonging and bringing it to the forefront to unite us and not just talk about that immigrants are the problem and
Yes.
what we can do with that. So we are here to help people understand who you are, are you running for the New York State Comptroller, and as well, this position is such a how to call it. People don't really know who's a
No.
controller.
Obscure, yes.
Yeah, so please share with us.
Well, first of all, thank you so very much for having me on. I'm very excited to be here. And I think the immigrant story is exactly really why I'm running. One of the things that I talk about a lot is that I'm the first in my family born in this country. My mom and dad came from India with nothing, not a dollar. They did have their education, and they struggled. They came to Rochester, New York. They went from apartment to apartment. They finally settled in the Midwest. My wife's parents actually similarly came from India with nothing. They ended up moving also, ironically, to Rochester. And then they got on a bus and went to Orange County, New York, where they were brought in by some locals and the jobs were found in the local school district. And they ended up being union members their whole lives teaching. My parents set up a medical clinic in the Midwest. They gave away huge amounts of medical care. And then in the last 10 years of my dad's life, and my mom is still living, they actually also work for the union here in New York City, for the hotel union as staff physicians. One story I always tell is that when my mother once delivered a baby, she delivered 5,000 babies in her career and was an incredible physician, grandmother, and small business owner. The father of the baby, who happened to be a white man, found out that she was foreign born. And he went crazy. He yelled in the hospital. He scratched her name off the birth certificate. It caused a whole scene. You can imagine how that scarred her. And where we were from, they didn't take any action against that father. Here in New York, that guy would have been arrested. There, they told her, my mother, to suck it up. And so we all know that these are the struggles we go through. I know what it's like to not know your grandparents. Don't know my grandparents at all. In fact, just this week, we lost my mom's kid brother in India at age 78. And, the distance is far and it's very difficult. And, I remember what it was like the only time the phone would ring when it was bad news. It was $2 a minute just for the phone calls back then. My mother didn't see her mother, didn't physically talk to her even on the phone for 3 years. When she was in a new country, a foreign place. She was the only female doctor in a very, very conservative place. Only female, obstetrician. Mm-hmm. So this is not only a time when men ran everything in medicine, but it's also very conservative. We lived a lot of hard times. My older brother, he went to 8 different schools and in a 5-year period because they kept moving around and trying and struggling to make it.
How did it shape you? How your life as a child, especially teenager, it affected you, who you are today?
Well, we were always different, and in a way, it it made me know that I had to work harder and I had to succeed because we had more barriers in front of us. Nothing was handed to us at all. And so that was the spirit and the values and the mindset that we had growing up and that I've continued and that we're hopefully instilling in our daughters. I have two teenage daughters, ages 14 and 16. Mm-hmm. My wife, as I mentioned, is also Indian American, also the daughter of immigrants. She worked in the mall at a shoe store for years. And her parents were public school teachers, and her brother has turned out to be one of the great biotechnology entrepreneurs in America. And my wife's a successful lawyer. But the most important thing is we realize that the struggles of immigrants and the struggles of what working families go through is always top of mind. And I'm the only person, you asked about this comptroller's race. The comptroller's office is the most powerful office you've never heard of. I'm running for this office because we can lower utility rates, we can build affordable housing, we can tackle the affordability crisis and fight Donald Trump's war on immigrants. And a huge piece of that is to get ICE out of New York. I'm the only one in the race who understands the immigrant experience up close and personal, and I've fought for immigrants my entire career. I at the ACLU, I was a staff attorney there. I work in South Africa. I've been involved in many immigrant organizations. I started the largest South Asian political organization in the country called Impact, which has helped hundreds of first generation of immigrants. And some first and second generation immigrants get to elected office.
How did it happen? Was there like a turning point in your life, and what it was that you drifted into the public service and later into the political and leadership roles?
Yes, well, I like to joke my mother dropped me on my head as a kid, but she's an obstetrician, so that's not funny to her. It's not funny to any mother. And I was always just very passionate about public service, even when I was in fourth grade, when I was in a very Republican area, and I represented the Democratic candidate for president, when you do the mock elections in school. So public service has always been a big part of my story, a big part of my life. I very much passionately believe that you can use systems, that you can change systems. Solving problems is really what I think we all have a moral obligation to do. If we have the power to make a system better and to help people live a better life, we should do that.
Yes. And now that you are running for the New York State Comptroller, can you tell us, first of all, because as we know, a lot of people, they don't realize that this position even exists, what it's about, and what are the main tasks, how everyday life of a New York State Comptroller looks like, what are the duties, what actually you can do, because it's an audit position. So
Yes. The state comptroller runs a $300 billion pension fund and is the state auditor. So most people don't know about it because one person has had it for 20 years. He's been in Albany for 40 years, and the insiders don't want people to know about it. It's a position that has not been used at all effectively to tackle the affordability crisis, to help immigrants. It's been viewed as sort of a backwater job in Albany, when it really should be a frontal job. It should be a job that everybody knows about, and the way it can help, as I mentioned before, is it can absolutely be the direct, what I like to call affordability watchdog. It can be the watchdog that fights for lower Con Ed bills, lower national grid bills. It can fight to put and directly invest in affordable housing and affordable homes, help get universal childcare, can audit the MTA, and yes, can absolutely help immigrants directly. So right now, the current state comptroller has $500 million in a company that is ICE's software partner called Palantir. And it's a terrible investment, and the current incumbent has a ton of money, of our money, in that company. I will pull that money on day one. And the state, being the state auditor, the state comptroller can audit the county governments to make sure they're not cooperating with ICE. through training, through detention centers, through warehousing. That's a very important step. And of course, advocate for legislation like New York for All. So these are all the things that the comptroller can do. And also, if I could say, use the bully pulpit. The third highest ranking official in New York State should be out there in communities talking about the immigrant experience, welcoming immigrants. And our current comptroller is not doing any of that.
What is the biggest executive power of the New York State Comptroller? Like, what is the most, like let's say the president, he can go to war. He can decide, let's go, we are going to war.
Which we've tragically seen, yes.
Yes. What about the position of the New York State Comptroller?
The state comptroller runs $300 billion of a pension fund, and he runs that unilaterally as the sole trustee. So this is a very powerful position that should be used not only to grow the pension fund, which he has done, which should be done better than it has been done now, but also reflects our values. There's no reason to have the pension fund in a company that is helping ICE. There's no reason to have the pension fund in foreign bonds that fund war crimes and a genocide abroad. These are the things that is a unilateral power of the comptroller. And as I mentioned, that auditing function. So every dollar of state money, even locality and county money, can be used. Can be audited by the state comptroller for waste, fraud, and abuse, and to make things efficient, because if we don't deliver government services efficiently, we're wasting money. We're not doing everything we can to help people live a better life.
Yes. And why do you think that nobody tried to challenge the current comptroller, who has been, like you said, in the position for so many years?
Well, I think the Democratic Party has had a mindset problem. That's why Donald Trump has won 2 out of the last 3 elections and almost won a third. And because we have not I'm part of the progressive vanguard that is challenging the establishment, that is saying we need to do better. We need fighters, not folders. And that's why I'm running. We need better Democrats.
Better Democrats, yes.
Yes.
I have this question, a very long one for you, which I'm going to read.
Sure.
You come from the public service and the technology world, and you help to build a legal tech company using data and AI. And on this podcast, we talk a lot about immigrant identity and belonging. And because many immigrant families are still trying to find their place in the system which is not always built for them, how do you think AI and technology can either help to create the belonging or access fairness, or if used badly can make people feel even more invisible?
Well, it's a great question. The Pope, as you know, just issued a massive document around AI and the dangers of AI. And so I would say all technology innovation has the potential to help people live a better life, of course, has the potential to solve, like, think about in medicine and healthcare. If we could use technology to solve disease. I mean, as the son of 2 physicians, my father, my beloved late dad, used to say that he was a cardiologist, that in the golden age of cardiology, millions of people being kept alive, living, not passing away because of technology innovation. So you think of a field like radiology, where the machine and AI can help us spot disease and keep people alive. That's the exciting part of AI. The very dangerous part is that we have technologies that we don't quite understand and control. So we have huge ethical issues of exactly how far the artificial intelligence can go, the damage that it can do. We need to have those guardrails. And more importantly, equally importantly, we need to make sure that we protect the livelihoods of people now, and that we, for the sake of rushing into technology, we don't displace millions of people from living the lives that they deserve to live. And an example of this is Uber. So Uber, of course, was a huge success, and there is and was a huge demand for ride sharing. the existing taxi industry, or structure, I should say, was not able to really fulfill that need in using technologies, and everybody has a mobile phone. So it was, of course, innovative and very important that we have ride sharing. But we did not think through at all the devastating effect on the taxi drivers' lives. And so it destroyed the taxi medallion market. So we had driver suicides, we had people plunged into bankruptcy. And so what we need to do is make sure, and AI, we know that powerful tools always harm immigrants the most. We know that immigrants are often an afterthought, and that are always not the most well-connected and protected by our governmental systems and the people in power. And so we have to make sure that artificial intelligence, for example, with immigration law, something that I'm quite familiar with, AI could be a powerful tool to spread legal representation with the click of a button. You could talk into a phone and have your legal case laid out for you with the legal documents. At the same time, AI could manipulate people, lead into scams, spread disinformation. And that's all quite dangerous. So I believe our current comptroller does not even use a computer. He's been a politician for 53 years. I, of course, have run a technology company. I grapple with these issues. I think about them. I've worked in these fields. And so I do believe that having people in elected office who understand the challenges of the AI age are very, very important as we grapple with this in the months and years to come.
I was thinking about that in the past myself, if this is really problem of AI, or maybe just the technology is being developed too fast and people are not being able to catch up. I'm thinking about, for example, my parents who are in their 80s. They are still using old type of phone and they don't want to learn anything more. So there is a lot of people who are just like left behind. So it means that we are kind of stuck like 20-30 years behind in some, especially in the government. Maybe it's not really AI, because like you said, AI brings a lot of good, but just the population is so big that it's not able to catch up, and it's not able to be spread down to the bottom of the chain.
Well, I think that's right, which is, as a basic rule, when technology innovation happens, like think about the digital divide. When broadband started, it was for the rich, and it was for the well-connected who could pay for high-speed internet. I mean, I'm old enough to remember dial-up internet. And so, first of all, any internet access was for the wealthy. Then dial-up became more universal. Then broadband became something for people who were wealthy. And then that had to be trickled down. And we said, look, this is to not be connected to the internet, to not have high-speed broadband, is to not be connected to society. So therefore, we had to invest in it. As we move forward with artificial intelligence, we must make sure we don't repeat that pattern. And there's two things going on, because broadband internet was, of course, nothing is perfect, but was universally thought of as a public or as a good, that it was something that was giving access to shared information and this new thing that was created called the public internet. But AI, as we just talked about, has both upside and downside. And so we not only have to make sure that we have people who access it universally, so that there is not inequities in who accesses artificial intelligence, but that, as I said before, that it has the guardrails in place so that it doesn't cause more damage to society than good. And that is a deep, deep issue that we must worry about, because look, let's be very clear. I know Silicon Valley, I understand Silicon Valley quite well. They do not care. The people who run these companies do not care about society generally. They don't care about immigrants per se. What they care about is growing a technology, and even if that means breaking a lot of eggs, to obviously maximize financial outcome. And that is a problem for many people in society, because we will be left behind and injured.
Do you think that with United States, and especially New York, that you are running for, they are immigrants and citizens. When we say immigrants, like everyone is immigrant, people speaking basically over 100 different languages, and that the technology can be better implemented for their goods, for removing the alienation that they feel because they live in clusters of the communities, let's say Chinese community, a South Asian community, and they just interact between each other. That maybe there could be done something to integrate them thanks to that technology. And is this anything in the hands of the controller power?
Well, I think that my good friend Vivek Murthy, who's the Surgeon General, has written a lot about loneliness and about community. So nothing ever replaces. It makes me a little bit worried when people like Mark Zuckerberg say that there's a loneliness epidemic and the answer is Facebook. The answer is not a bot, and the answer is not a digital friend. Is human connectiveness. I've been a caretaker a lot of my life, to care. I never knew my grandparents, as I mentioned, so it's very important to me that my daughters know their all four grandparents. So we arranged, or the way that life worked out is that my parents and my in-laws live on our block. Mm-hmm. So you talk about the immigrant experience. We have a joint family, a multi-generational family. Sadly, we've lost my father-in-law and my father, but we are now 6 of us. Mm-hmm. And that's very, very important. And that connectivity between humans and the bonds across family, you cannot replace that. There's no technology that could ever substitute for that. But of course, we can have AI and other technology tools that help facilitate human connection, and that's a good thing. I'll give one example, which is it used to be impossible to talk to people overseas in my parents' home country of India. Now with WhatsApp, it's a click of a button, and that's an improvement. I mean, that's an incredible human connectivity story that is important. So the comptroller is the office that should be the one that is helping immigrants live better lives. And yes, investing in new technologies, understanding that immigrant experience, making sure we could have an office of immigrant affairs in the comptroller's office that is making sure that immigrant communities aren't being left behind when it comes to with the audit power, with housing, with utility bills, with child care, and of course with the effect that ICE has in New York. These are very, very important issues, and the comptroller runs that pension fund. Which communities are being left out of the economic growth of New York State? We know immigrant communities will be left behind. So the comptroller should be on the forefront of making sure that we have equity in these communities.
That brings me to an interesting point, because as well with Miss Immigrant USA discover that when we go to the communities, we speak with people, a lot of immigrants, they don't have the pension fund. They even don't understand what it is. They are kind of stuck back in their country, like, for example, especially South Asian communities, India, Chinese,
yes,
even other communities. Somehow, because they are kind of like on the back of the system, and there is no penetration there, they're scared of the government. They don't have good experience from their countries back with the government, that the government might want good for them, and they don't have the pension funds. Is there as well something like on the back of your mind that some kind of education program, something to bring awareness and programs that actually could help them to put the hard-earned money into their future, so later on when they are 70 years old, they don't end up, on the streets, not having something to eat?
I'm glad you asked that. I'm obsessed with this question, which is, it's always haunted me, having been around government for 30 years, why we don't do a better job of explaining government services. We make people go from office to office, paperwork after paperwork. It's not explainable. It's not easy to understand. And of course, our immigrant communities are hit the hardest for that. So yes, I will be focused like a laser on that very issue to make sure that, most of the people in the state pension fund, there should be good communication with that, but I have heard many stories of people who have a lot of difficulty getting information from the New York State Pension Fund right now. So yes, I am an operations guy, and we will absolutely focus hugely on that issue to make sure that people get their benefits, and not just beyond the pension fund. Some people might not understand that they can have employer even 401ks, they can have 529 plans, they can have so much things to do, have financial literacy, to have savings to help grow their family and protect their children. And as you said, the worst would be for people who end up retiring and then not even able to sustain themselves, not even able to afford basic things. And we know that happens in the immigrant communities more than non-immigrant communities, and that's a tragedy.
For a second, I'm going to go back. You mentioned that you moved your parents and in-laws so you guys live next to each other to make your whole family more together. How does your daughters are being influenced by your parents?
You can't even put words to describe it. In fact, I say that when my mother walks in the apartment, we don't say hello to her, not because we're being rude, but because it's not remarkable. She's in and out of the apartment. And so again, as someone who never knew my grandparents and had to work very hard to establish, and which I've done, deep connections in my extended family around the world, for my daughters to see how we take care of our parents, how their grandparents love them unconditionally and are always there for them, that bond between a grandparent and a grandchild is very unique. And so I see that. I think my children, my wife and I, our daughters, they're loving and they're caring, and of course they're not perfect, but most importantly, they understand the multi-generational bonds that family brings them. And they have a feeling. We go to every family wedding, and they understand how important their cousins are and their uncles and their aunts. And that is a deep connection, not only to our shared culture and our commonality, but I think also, frankly, for human connection generally. It's a very, very important piece. And so that unconditional love, I remember my father, he could be a little bit stern when we were growing up because he was so committed to succeeding. And then he just melted with his grandchildren. I'll never forget, he once got my niece, my brother's youngest, ice cream in bed. And we said, oh my God, how could you wouldn't even let us eat ice cream. I mean, what's happening here? And that's the journey of being a grandparent.
How does because your parents were immigrants, are they passing the immigrant experience, the struggles, the successes, the change of culture to the grandparents? To the granddaughters, and how does it influence the girls?
Yeah, I mean, the girls they ask them for all the stories of growing up in India. They've learned the stories of how hard they have to struggle when they got here. They've, of course, embodied those values. They work hard. We want them to be fundamentally good people who treat people well and work to succeed. So we've seen it every day. I helped get the cell phone ban in public schools through. I led the outside effort through a group called Phone Free New York. And I think that when they saw, my girls also saw me get active in public life, it also, I don't know if they would ever be, ever have I don't know what it takes to run for run for office, but sometimes people think it's a little nuts. But I have no obligation or no expectation they do that. But I think when they see someone involved in civic life, and they see that my mother was super involved in many charitable organizations and delivered babies and ran a small business and is a loving grandmother, they get inspired by that. And that's not a high bar for them professionally, but a high bar for them personally. And that's the best example you can have. And as I said, that cell phone ban, I think a lot of your viewers might be interested in that. That has been a huge success. Even though I ran a technology company, as you mentioned, and I love innovation and technology, I'm a dad first, and we realize it gets back to the AI issue. We're all addicted to these devices. And there is a huge mental health crisis, particularly among teen girls. And so it's very important that we gave people a break, and that we gave kids a break from being off their phones during the day.
What does it mean for you to belong?
we all, as I think human beings, have a desire to belong, to not be excluded, to be included. And the reason I'm running for comptroller is that I do believe there's far too many people who are excluded, who don't belong and don't feel they belong to our society, to our economy, certainly to our government. And one of the most important things that I think Zoran Mamdani did, apart from policy, was to get people to believe again that we could have a politics that responded to their concerns, to people who can't afford to live here, who feel like they're excluded, who are under fear from Donald Trump's ICE agents. My mother at age 83 thought she could be deported and denaturalized. She's been a citizen for 45 years, been in this country 55 years. That's the level of fear out there right now. So I believe that belonging means that you combat you combat exclusion, you combat otherness, and that's the best thing about New York. I was, the Knicks won in 4 last night. I went to the Garden afterwards just to run around and celebrate a little bit. That's sports bringing everybody together. That was across racial lines, across class lines, across gender. It was a very exciting thing, and that's something unique and powerful to sports. It can happen with music, but it can obviously happen in ethnic and immigrant traditions as well. So I believe belonging, which is a wonderful question and a wonderful concept. It's one of the reasons I'm running.
As we are on Wise Immigrant Podcast, we like to ask our running candidates, what is a wisdom that you would like to share with others?
That we can actually do better and that you can expect more from the government to help you live a better life. We can, in fact, expect the government and offices like the state comptroller to help you make life more affordable, to have you be seen, to be included. We can do that. And if we vote for change, and I would suggest, voting for Raj Goyle for comptroller on June 23rd, early voting begins June 13th. You can learn more at rajgoyle.com or Instagram, rajgoyleny. We can actually do these things together.
That was my next question. How people can learn more about you?
Well, again, rajgoyle.com. Thank you so very much.
Raj, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for taking this challenging journey into the position of New York State Comptroller, especially that you have such a tough challenger in front of you. And we wish you good luck with that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.